A modest woman in old clothes came to the train station. She sat silently and didn't bother anyone, but was harassed and humiliated because of her appearance. Her worn clothes and old suitcase led people to call her homeless. But that was a serious mistake, because she was actually an inspector evaluating the station. And the way she punished everyone will leave you speechless. The morning train was due at 8:42. But she arrived at 7 o'clock. A woman in a weather-worn coat and mismatched gloves, her hair tucked under a loosely knit hat, stepped onto the marble-tiled entrance of Arden Central Station. The station, a gleaming nexus of glass and metal funded by regional elite partnerships, buzzed with designer luggage wheels, stiletto heels, and perfume that smelled like money. No one looked twice at each other. Only her. She paused under the chandelier-lit archway, her canvas bag slung over one shoulder, soles quiet against the polished floor. Beneath the terminal's high dome, LED banners scrolled welcome messages in 3 languages. Above them, cameras blinked red. Security guards in fitted navy uniforms stood like statues. Porters moved with rehearsed courtesy toward men in suits and women in tailored coats that cost more than her entire wardrobe. Her face was wind-bitten, her lashes damp with mist. She looked too tired to be dangerous, too plain to be important. People noticed. And judged. A mother pulled her child closer. A man in a camel hair coat scoffed as she passed. "She shouldn't be in here," someone muttered, not quietly. The woman stepped into the central waiting hall and took a seat on the edge of a leather bench. Her bag brushed the floor. One of the station's concierge staff, a young man with a monogrammed badge, gave her a glance that lingered too long. His smile tightened. At 7:13, a security guard approached. He was broad-shouldered and bored, the kind of man who'd been given too much uniform and too little oversight. His boots squeaked with self-importance as he strode toward her. "No loitering," he said without preamble, arms folded. "I'm waiting for a train," she answered quietly, her voice dry from travel. He didn't ask for a ticket. Didn't ask her name. Just scanned her coat, threadbare at the elbows, a tear at the cuff, and saw what he wanted to see. "Lady, this is not a shelter," he said, louder now. Eyes turned. "You can't sit here. We've got standards." She didn't move. He stepped closer. "You deaf?" I said out. More people watched now, a man holding an espresso, a woman balancing a Prada carry-on, a teenage girl scrolling her phone who smirked as the guard's voice rose. "You can wait outside," he said, snatching at her elbow. "We're not a halfway house." Her canvas bag thumped against the bench as he pulled her up. The laughter started with a snort. Then a chuckle. Then more. One man even took a photo. The guard shoved the bag into her chest and pointed toward the door. "Next time, try the soup kitchen down the block." She blinked but said nothing. Her breath made no fog as she turned slowly and walked out under the cold eyes of the station. Behind her, someone muttered, "God, she probably smells." The station doors closed with a whisper. She disappeared into the morning fog like smoke. But the story had just begun. She stood just outside the frosted glass doors of Arden Central, snow melting at her boots, holding her canvas bag like it contained the only thing she owned. Inside, the station buzzed. Laughter crackled. Screens lit up with another TikTok upload. "Dude, he threw her out like a stray dog," a young man barked into his phone, replaying the video. In it, the guard's hand gripped the woman's elbow. Her head bowed. Her lips barely moved. By 7:28, the video had nearly 14,000 views. Comments filled fast. "Why is she even inside? That coat's older than my grandma. This is why we can't have nice things." Inside the cafe on the mezzanine, 3 women in matching camel wool coats sipped espresso. One of them, Natalia Sloan, an event coordinator for the Regional Development Forum, watched the footage, then turned to her friends. "She looked like she'd slept in the janitor's closet," Natalia said, brushing croissant flakes off her skirt. "How does someone like that even get past security?" Her friend Anna snorted. "Maybe she was trying to get warm. I've seen strays in better shape." A burst of laughter. In the staff hallway, two junior managers from the local transport ministry watched the clip. One of them, Jordan, swiped through the comment thread. "Should we say something?" the younger one asked. Jordan shrugged. "Say what? Please be nice to the maybe homeless woman who got tossed out." "Nah. This city eats weakness." At 7:35, a group of influencers, local lifestyle bloggers in mink-lined vests and thigh-high boots, posed in front of the Golden Ardent sign, then turned to film a mock skit. One of them threw on a trench coat, dragged her friend out the door, and yelled, "Next time try a bath first." Laughter erupted behind the camera. She watched it all from the shadows near the outdoor heaters. No one noticed her anymore. The real her. A man brushed past and muttered, "Get a job." A station vendor called to her sarcastically, "Soup's not free here, sweetheart." Even a child pointed at her and whispered to her mother, "Why does she look so sad?" The mother answered without looking, "Some people never learn." No one offered warmth or kindness. Only disdain, collected, curated, and viral. She turned slowly, clutching the strap of her bag tighter. The snow had begun again, soft and slow. The station lights behind her gleamed like judgment. But still, she didn't leave. She waited. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because this was where they had to see her. All of them. And they would. She did not pace. She did not plead. She stood still, just outside the automatic doors of Arden Central, her back straight, her eyes quiet, the falling snow collecting lightly on the shoulders of her old coat. Inside, the laughter had softened into background noise. Most had moved on, their cruelty already replaced with new distractions. But a few still watched. The security guard, now leaning by the ticket turnstiles, grinned as he replayed the clip for his partner. "I mean, look at her. The mutt just stood there. Not even a bark. She didn't even argue," his partner said, shaking his head. "Weird, right? Usually they cry or shout. Yeah, like they matter." The first one chuckled. But she had done none of that. Her silence unnerved more than shouting would have. She stared forward now, not at the guards, not at the commuters, but at the wide schedule board just inside the station. Its blinking times and tracks reflected faintly in her eyes, though she didn't move toward it. She simply was there. Unmoving. Unapologetic. People passed her like wind around a stone. One woman, red lipstick perfect and designer heels clicking, slowed as she saw the woman still outside. She frowned. "She's still here?" the woman muttered to no one. She reached for her phone, took a photo through the glass, then added to the growing thread. "Update. She's literally just standing there like a ghost. Creepy." Inside the cafe, Natalia saw the post and burst out laughing. "She's seriously just waiting? What does she think? Someone's going to invite her in for tea?" "I swear," Anna added, "it's like watching a loser cosplay dignity." The phrase caught on. By 8 o'clock, the tag #LoserCosplayDignity trended locally. She shifted slightly, brushing snow from her sleeve with a bare hand. Her knuckles were red with cold. Her lips were pale. But her chin was high. A station janitor pushing a mop paused near the window, watching her for a long moment. He said nothing, but the tilt of his head betrayed confusion, maybe even pity. She met his gaze. She didn't smile. She didn't flinch. But she saw him. And in that moment, someone in Arden saw her as human. She turned her gaze back to the glass. And waited. Not with hope. With purpose. At exactly 8:32, a sleek, unmarked black car pulled into the station's executive drop-off lane. Its presence shifted the air. No logos. No license plate visible from the front. The kind of vehicle that made people stand a little straighter without knowing why. From the front seat, a driver stepped out in a navy wool coat and earpiece. He moved briskly to the back, opened the door, and out stepped a man in a charcoal suit with a silver pin at the collar. The station's security team straightened. Natalia, from the cafe above, dropped her cup. Isn't that the deputy governor's chief of protocol?" She was right. and he was walking toward the front entrance with purpose. Inside the station, phones came out. The crowd shifted like a tide of suits and fur-lined coats parting to watch. But they weren't his destination. He walked past the concierge, past the ticket kiosks, past the guards who had laughed an hour earlier, and straight to the glass doors, where she still stood, unmoving, silent, snow melting off her shoulders in thin rivulets. The man bowed. Not a nod. A bow. "Ms. Novak," he said clearly, so the crowd could hear. "The Regional Executive Committee thanks you for your discretion this morning." The station went still. She nodded, once, and finally stepped forward. The automatic doors slid open with a whisper, and she crossed the threshold again. This time, no one dared block her. A younger official appeared behind the first man, holding out a folder embossed with a golden seal. Inside were letters, stamped, signed, and dated, bearing international headers. One bore the insignia of the European Transit Safety Board. Another from the National Office of Infrastructure Equity. A third from the World Urban Access Council. "I believe these should clarify your identity to the local authority," he said. The guards paled. The one who had touched her elbow stumbled backward. "This has to be some mistake," he muttered. But it wasn't. "Ms. Novak is not only the evaluation lead for the International Station Compliance Initiative," the official continued, his voice cold. "She is its founder, and one of 5 advisors globally responsible for infrastructure ethics oversight under the Geneva Accord." Silence crashed over the room. A woman near the schedule board gasped. She was auditing us?" The crowd turned. Phones dropped. Faces drained. "Today was an unannounced incognito compliance review," the younger official added, handing a printed memo to the station director. "Her appearance was deliberate. Her treatment, unfortunately, documented in full." Someone opened the memo. Inside, time-stamped footage from internal security cameras. Transcripts of insults. Screenshots of trending posts mocking her appearance. Each page evidence. She stood quietly in the middle of it all, not triumphant, just present. One of the PR staffers, a man who had laughed hardest earlier, whispered to himself, "We're finished." The deputy governor's envoy turned to the room. "Those who participated in or enabled harassment of Ms. Novak will be formally identified. Effective immediately, all pending infrastructure proposals tied to this facility are frozen." Gasps rippled. Natalia Sloane's espresso cup fell from her hand and shattered on the floor. The same guard who shoved her an hour ago tried to step forward. "Ma'am, I didn't." "You did," she said, her voice calm, at last. And that was the only thing she needed to say. The fallout began not with a shout, but with a clipboard. A slim stack of documents, held firmly in the gloved hand of a legal liaison from the Regional Administrative Office, was delivered to the station director. The top page read, "Preliminary Conduct Violations, Incident Number 2087B/Arden Central Station." Below it, the list began. Security Officer Dylan Kerr, terminated immediately. Reason, physical removal of compliance agent, unauthorized use of force, conduct unbecoming. He turned pale. "That's not fair," he stammered, looking around, as if someone might save him. No one did. The second guard was named next, Officer Glenn Martin, suspended indefinitely. Complicity. Failure to intervene. He removed his badge in silence. The cafe staff were next. Natalia Sloane. Anna Devon. Both listed by full name and employee ID under the header, "Malicious Public Conduct and Defamation of Oversight Official." Phones buzzed with incoming calls from sponsors, affiliates, and city stakeholders. The video, the one where Natalia called her a loser cosplaying dignity, was now in full circulation. The cafe's parent chain had already issued a statement distancing themselves. "Wait, this can't be happening," Anna breathed, her voice cracking. "We didn't know who she was." The legal officer didn't flinch. "That is precisely the point." More names followed. Station Supervisor Lauren Fitch, demoted, salary frozen, under review for breach of protocol. Marketing Associate Mason Keys, terminated for initiating viral content from a work-linked account. And it didn't stop. A monitor in the station lobby flickered on. A clean graphic appeared with the seal of the Regional Integrity Council. It read, "Public harassment of a federal oversight official is a violation of Article 19E, resulting in expulsion from future grant eligibility." Underneath that, the following line appeared. "These individuals are hereby barred from participating in or benefiting from any infrastructure or transportation development contracts for the next 12 years. A second list appeared on screen. It included 2 assistant architects from the regional committee who had shared mocking memes, a junior analyst from the Transit Design Bureau who had commented, "Probably smells like the floor," even a freelance photographer who took part in filming her exit. The implications hit like a tidal wave. Phones dropped. Contracts unraveled in real time. A man in a navy blazer dropped to a bench, muttering, 12 years. We're blacklisted." By 9:10 a.m., sponsors for Arden Central's upcoming renovations announced withdrawals from all pending projects. The station's public relations team collapsed in a heap of phones and whispered expletives. The irony was sharp. They had spent hours ensuring no coffee cup was out of place, and overlooked the only presence that mattered. And through it all, she stood still. A single line from the official report appeared on every major screen inside the station. "Dignity does not require permission." She stepped forward at last. Not onto a podium. Not into a spotlight. Just a single step forward, to the center of the grand waiting hall, where an hour ago, she'd been shoved out like refuse. The hall had grown so quiet, the snow tapping the windows could be heard. She adjusted the strap on her canvas bag and turned slowly. Her gaze swept the room. Some lowered their eyes. Others watched, frozen in shame. "I didn't come to inspect your policies," she said. Her voice was low, steady, the kind of voice that didn't rise to be heard, but made others fall silent to listen. "I came to see your humanity." The words fell like ash. "You failed before you even touched my coat," she continued, "because you thought the worth of a person could be read by the condition of their sleeves." Her eyes met Dylan Kerr's, the guard who'd shoved her. He looked down, his hands trembling. "I watched," she said. "Not just how I was treated, but how others stayed silent. I walked into your station as a stranger. And you decided I was less than that." She turned toward Natalia Sloane, whose once playful smirk had now collapsed into a tight, pale grimace. "You didn't ask who I was. You told me who you were. And I listened." A murmur passed through the hall. From behind the cafe window, Anna began to quietly cry. She raised her hand, not to shame, but to stop the moment there. To let the stillness settle. "This isn't about revenge," she said. "It's about reflection." Then, calmly, "I won't be filing criminal charges. I won't ruin your names further." A breath of relief passed over some. "But," she added, and here her voice sharpened ever so slightly, "your own actions already did that." A pause. "I didn't need to raise my voice. You did the shouting for me." And with that, she turned to leave. No mic drop. No dramatic exit. Just the quiet click of worn heels against marble as she walked away. And the sound of shame following her, louder than any applause. The crowd thinned like fog under sunlight. By 9:30, the influencers had disappeared, wiping their accounts clean. The cafe was closed. For technical issues. The guards were gone. The laughter had stopped. But a few stayed behind. A janitor, the one who had paused by the window earlier, approached the bench where she had first sat. He bent down quietly and picked up a wool glove she had dropped, then set it gently on the seat, as if preserving a relic. A young woman in a maintenance vest stood nearby, eyes wide, still holding the station's morning report. She hadn't spoken during the humiliation. Hadn't filmed. Hadn't shared. Just observed, and quietly slid a water bottle toward the woman's bench hours ago. Now she stepped forward, touched the glove once, and whispered to the janitor. She didn't raise her voice. No, the janitor said. She didn't have to. The large screen in the waiting hall still displayed her name, Elena Novak. Below it, the emblem of the World Urban Access Council. And a quote that wasn't hers, but now felt like it belonged to her. Power never demands proof. It just waits to be seen. The station director, Lorne Fitch, remained as well. His hands were folded behind his back. His face, ghost pale. He looked out at the benches, at the place where she'd stood, unmoving, in the snow, and said nothing. He didn't need to. Upstairs, in the control room, the video feeds were still playing. Security footage from every camera, preserved, copied, encrypted, and already distributed. This story would not be forgotten. It wasn't just a scandal. It was a reckoning. And as Elena Novak stepped into the waiting black car outside, her coat still damp at the hem, her dignity intact, she didn't look back. She didn't need to. Because the ones who mattered had seen everything. And the ones who didn't were gone. 10 years earlier, Elena Novak stood in line at a border checkpoint, her fingers ink-stained from documents she'd translated by hand. Her coat back then had no buttons, she used a safety pin to hold it closed. She was 24, fresh out of a university few people in the West could pronounce. No connections. No resume beyond tutoring and field notes. But she carried a conviction that felt heavier than any suitcase she owned. In that line, surrounded by others with desperation in their eyes, she clutched a folder, one she had built herself. It contained hand-drawn maps of unsafe transit stations, annotated case studies from 3 continents, and policies translated into 5 languages. No one had paid her for the work. No one had asked. But she believed people deserved safe, dignified places to wait. And that dignity shouldn't depend on their shoes. She never asked how high the ceiling was. She simply began building the ladder. Elena spent nights drafting grant applications in shelters, submitting proposals from public library terminals. Sometimes she taught children how to read on the floor of migrant centers. Sometimes she swept her own footprints from borrowed office floors before interviews she'd never get. And yet, people remembered her. A customs agent who let her through when her visa had smudged. A mid-level infrastructure officer who forwarded her proposal. Just in case. A tired civil servant in Belgium who remembered how she translated his father's memoir, and signed her name onto a clearance list without question. She never asked to be made director. But eventually, her work left no one else to choose. The International Station Compliance Initiative, born in a shared workspace above a laundromat in Sofia, became a global oversight authority in less than a decade. Her model was adopted by 8 countries. Her anonymous audits became legendary. No photo existed of her online. Only the results. She turned down every speaking engagement. Refused public credit. "I don't want to be recognized," she once told a colleague. "I want to be unmistakable when the test comes." So when she walked into Arden Central that morning in a coat with thinning seams and gloves that didn't match, it wasn't by accident. It was the test. Of them. And they failed. She had walked the length of the station 3 times before sitting. She'd watched staff ignore a man who needed directions because he didn't speak English well. She'd seen a woman with a stroller turned away from the VIP lounge because her child's shoes were scuffed. She took notes. Not on paper, she didn't need to. She remembered everything. By the time the guard touched her elbow, she'd already written her final report in her mind. She didn't cry because she had known. But a small part of her had still hoped that someone would say, "Ma'am, do you need help?" No one had. And so, she gave them what they deserved. Not vengeance. Proof. By noon, Arden Central was no longer just a train station. It was a headline. Humiliation at the hub, international auditor mistaken for homeless, expels entire project team. The Global Herald. From court to court, Elena Novak's silent test unravels corruption. Euronews. A reckoning in real time. What happens when power wears no name tag? The Atlantic. The video had spread beyond city lines. then past country borders. By the end of the day, 42 million views. A trending tag, hashtag Elena did not flinch. A still image became iconic. Elena, standing with snow melting at her feet, eyes forward, untouched by the shouting behind her. Journalists swarmed the story. Think pieces bloomed like wildfire. We dress for the job we want, but what happens when the world decides you're nothing? When compassion is conditional, it's not compassion. The Regional Oversight Board scrambled for damage control. Their press conference lasted 6 minutes before reporters began asking, "Did you know Ms. Novak was coming? Why did none of your personnel intervene? Is Ardent Central a symbol of systemic classism?" By 2 p.m., the city's mayor had issued a statement, an apology wrapped in red tape. But no one was listening to him. All eyes were on her. Elena Novak didn't speak again that day. But her office did. They released the formal audit, 39 pages of names, timestamps, direct quotes, and policy violations. The tone was clinical. The implications were devastating. 9 regional staff were fired. 3 lost pending international grants. 2 architectural firms were blacklisted from global infrastructure projects. 1 influencer's sponsorship contracts dissolved overnight. Within hours, compliance boards in Germany, France, Brazil, and South Korea announced they were adopting the Novak method, randomized incognito oversight conducted by disguised evaluators. A movement had begun. Meanwhile, those who had laughed now posted apologies, stylized statements and notes app screenshots, shared to quiet comments. "I didn't realize she was someone important. I didn't mean to cause harm. We all make mistakes." But the public wasn't buying it. "You meant it," one reply read. "You just thought no one important was watching." A popular podcast dedicated an entire episode to the moment. "What does it say about a society?" the host asked. "When the assumption of poverty means you lose the right to be treated like a human?" And across forums, videos, and comment threads, a single line kept echoing. She didn't flinch. Elena Novak had spoken fewer than 50 words. And she changed everything. The next morning, the sun rose over Ardent Central like nothing had happened. But everything had changed. Inside the main hall, a new sign stood just beyond the entrance. "All persons, regardless of appearance, are to be treated with dignity. Station Policy Revision 47A, instated April 5, by Executive Order." Below it, smaller but sharper. "In honor of Elena Novak." She was already gone. No farewell address. No post on social media. No interview. Elena Novak had left the city at dawn, boarding a regional train under a different name, in the same coat she wore the day before. No guards. No entourage. Just the silence she preferred. By then, she'd already declined 3 interview requests, a magazine cover, and 2 honorary degrees. She left something else instead. On the desk of the newly instated interim director sat a sealed envelope addressed to the next one. Inside were 5 pages. Handwritten. Guidelines. Questions. A checklist of things to notice when no one else does. It ended with one simple sentence. "If they must know who you are to respect you, they were never worthy of your respect." At schools, students now study the Novak incident in ethics modules. At international transport summits, her audit became a case study in unconscious bias. At stations around the world, posters emerged with a familiar phrase. "Dignity does not require permission." The janitor at Ardent Central, the one who had picked up her glove, now kept it folded in his locker, a reminder, he said, of the day truth didn't shout, but was heard anyway. The maintenance worker, the one who had offered her water, was quietly promoted a week later. Natalia Sloane's cafe was replaced by a public reading corner for travelers. Her social accounts remained private, her offers rescinded, her name now a lesson in what not to become. And Dylan Kerr? He applied for reinstatement. His application was denied, permanently. The station has never been the same. Not louder. Not richer. But gentler. A little more watchful. a little more still. Every so often, someone walks in wearing a worn coat, a quiet expression, and sits alone, just to see who'll offer kindness without knowing why. And in the silence, Elena Novak remains. Not in name. In standard.